What's up and welcome to My Point of View. I am your fat and opinionated host, and very early on, once Bryan Kohberger got arrested, it was revealed that he was conducting these surveys on Reddit. I made a couple of videos about it, and I thought that it was absolutely creepy. I even said that I thought it was some type of sick, twisted, weird social experiment for Bryan to figure out the best way for him to get away with committing a crime, committing the crime that he allegedly committed. But when I put that out there, I got some pushback. Some people are saying, "Oh, you're just posting salacious headlines. Oh, this is clickbait. Normal college students always do this. There's nothing to see here, folks. It's totally normal that a guy accused of unaliving 4 college students, it's totally normal that prior to doing that he was on Reddit, putting surveys out there, trying to find other killers online who could fill out his survey and let them know how they tried to get away with murder." So people tried to pretend like this was normal. I told you all along, it was weird. It's never not going to be weird. I don't care what classes Bryan was taking. When you look at what Bryan is accused of, and then you look at those Reddit posts or that Reddit survey, how can you not think that that is creepy? In fact, anyone saying otherwise, they are not being genuine. They're just trying to go against the grain for the sake of it. It's very creepy knowing that someone who allegedly took the lives of 4 young students also was conducting surveys on how best to get away with murder on Reddit. Well, now the experts, the officials, if you will, now they're coming out and they're saying that Kohberger had a sick social experiment going on and that his Reddit posts are mind-blowing. One thing I've noticed here is that everyday average people like myself, we can say something and people will give us so much pushback for it. Or people will act like, "Oh, that's crazy, blah, blah, blah." And then the experts weigh in and people are like, "Oh, yeah." And then they start paying attention. Little do they know that the experts don't even follow these situations that closely. They're just TV personalities that get their talking points fed to them through little freaking earpieces and stuff. Do you think Dr. Phil really knows about the Idaho 4 case? Do you think in Dr. Phil's spare time, he's sleuthing online, finding all of this information? I highly freaking doubt it. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and hear what the experts have to say, because they said some things that I think a lot of us have already been saying. But again, people listen to the experts. So let's see what they have to say. Experts discussed damning evidence posted to social media by the suspect of the Idaho 4 unalivings on Dr. Phil Thursday. Dr. Phil encouraged his guests to take a long look at a survey written by Kohberger and posted on Reddit. In this survey, purportedly for his graduate program, Kohberger asked criminals about how they planned and executed their crimes, with some phrasing that made Dr. Phil and his guests balk. He asked criminals to recount: did you struggle or fight the victim? How did you travel and enter the location that the crime occurred? The suspect also asked, what was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Trial attorney Mercedes Colwin suggested the Reddit survey would be used against Kohberger in court. If you match up that survey with the affidavit, it's mind-blowing, she said. The very first question he asked in that survey, where he's trying to ask about the emotions that people are feeling when they're committing crimes, is, how did you target your victims? Well, you go back to the affidavit, and they go back to the 12 pingings of his phone in or around the crime scene. She also noted a second time when he appeared to follow criminals' advice. The second step, but what did you do in preparation for the crime? Well, if he's in fact the killer, obviously is only a suspect, he turns off the phone. We know in the affidavit it says that phone turned off for the duration of the time that he traveled to the home, committed the crimes, and then only until he was back on the highway did the phone go back on. She observed all these steps that he asked these criminals in the survey he seems to have duplicated in the affidavit, according to law enforcement. But then she asked if he is the killer. What are we looking at? A sick social experiment? Dr. Phil suggested, I think part of it, he's wanting to live vicariously through it. And part of it, he's wanting to know what to expect. Because I don't have normal emotions and I don't want to panic. I need to know what to expect, what to think. That's odd. He's asking odd questions. Senior reporter for DailyMail.com, Caitlin Becker, focused on the way the survey was phrased. The word goal stands out for me too. How did you achieve your goal? I have goals. We have goals. They're positive things. They're not crimes for the most part, she said. So the fact that he is talking to criminals about their crimes and describing them as goals definitely struck me as odd. And that the person who's writing that question finds crime to be something to aspire to. Dr. Phil said that Kohberger's professor had said these are typical questions for a criminology student, but said, in the context and timing in which he does them, I don't believe in coincidence. Former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gillam said to Dr. Phil, the absence of evidence is often proof to a degree of guilt because a criminal deliberately covered their tracks to make themselves appear innocent. Because when he turned his cell phone off, when he turned it back on, those are the absence of the cell phone. But you still have the videotape of the car. It's actual proof that he was structuring his behavior in a way as to not get caught, he said. Cohen suggested he just thought he was smarter than everybody else. I think that's where it flows from. And you know what? I basically agree with everything that was said here. Just like Dr. Phil said, and I do not agree with Dr. Phil that often. Well, I agree with him sometimes. I understand that the professor that he was studying under, I understand that she's like, no, this is common. It's totally common for college students to go on Reddit and try to find murderers to answer their questions. Totally common. I don't believe in coincidences that much either. Coincidences, yeah, they happen. If you're online asking questions like this and then you go on to unalive people a little bit later on, I don't think it's a coincidence. Also, I'm telling you right now, we're never going to get the full story of everything that went on at the colleges Bryan attended. I'm not trying to blame any of his professors. I'm not trying to do that, but I can guarantee you all they're working overtime to cover a lot of this stuff up. And I've already seen that they've erased some things off their website. So everyone should really pay close attention. Okay? Pay close attention. Because they're going to try to tamper with some information here because it doesn't necessarily make them look good. Like the report that came out that Bryan possibly had access to security cameras around town. And he had access to confidential information that the average public does not have access to, like body cam footage and police reports. And then they came out and they were like, oh, no, Bryan specifically, he didn't have access, but other students. Listen, I don't trust them. I do not trust them. And any professor that's sitting here trying to act like this is normal, go ahead and, well, y'all do what y'all want. I will go ahead and write them off. Because at the end of the day, they're not trying to make themselves look bad. At the end of the day, they're trying to make their profession not look as weird as what it does right now. Because it looks hella weird right now. Anyone that's studying under people like Catherine Ramsland, trying to figure out how serial killers' minds work while posting weird surveys on Reddit and corresponding with serial killers in jail, yeah, it's looking hella sus. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's other psychopaths in school right now studying the same thing. Now, because we live in a PC world where people are fragile and they can't handle opinions, let me be sure to say that everyone studying this stuff is not a psychopath. But some of them most likely are. Also, I mean, the stuff about lack of evidence, like how the phone gets turned off during this time period, yeah, all of that stuff is going to be used against Bryan. Everything that these people went over and everything they said, it's all things that I've said. It's all things that you've probably heard elsewhere. So I can't disagree with anything they've said. It's just funny when you see people saying this stuff and people try to write it off, and then Dr. Phil comes along and says the same thing, and then people are like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. You know what? He has a point. Yeah, I think everyone else has had a point this entire time as well. So yeah, I do think this was a sick social experiment. I do think that, like Dr. Phil said, that maybe in ways he like vicariously lived through this in a way. Like, I don't know if he necessarily got off to it, but in a way, I think it pleased him hearing from people. It's almost like sexting. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way I look at it with Bryan Kohberger. It's like phone sex or something to Bryan. You know, getting these emails back from criminals telling him, yeah, this is how I got away with it, and this is how I entered the crime scene, and this is what I did to subdue my victims. Like, what in the hell? Why are things like that even allowed to happen? I find it so weird that I come on YouTube and I have to say things like unaliving. Do you think I want to use the word unaliving? What the hell does that even mean? No, I hate using that language. But it's weird that I have to come on here and use words like that. Meanwhile, people like Bryan could go online and conduct surveys with mass murderers trying to figure out who and why they did this and that so he could commit a better crime. It's like the internet's a wild place. They allow you to go crazy and do all types of crazy stuff. But when you're someone online that makes sense and has common sense and actually uses your platform to preach common sense, they absolutely hate it. I've been targeted on multiple platforms for simply using my voice to just try to bring a little more common sense to things. But hey, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I think Bryan Kohberger is a psychopath. I'm glad that other people are calling out this survey. For a while there, people tried to pretend like it was normal. Ain't nothing normal about that, and ain't nothing normal about Bryan Kohberger. Let me know your thoughts, though, down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, ring that notification bell, and as always, remain opinionated.